So thank you everyone for joining. This is one of the InfoShares we're running around open science in general. And we're going to focus on case studies today. We've been writing up some case studies with different NRENs about work they're doing. And we hope to expand that series. So it'd be interesting to hear reflections from you of work you've been doing that we could maybe profile in the case studies. And we're going to have three short 10-minute talks, one from Rene Belso on what's happening at DeiC around their support for the FAIR program. And then we'll hear from Tinnemans about connecting compute and RDM at SURF and how they're working with universities on that. And then we'll hear about the CRIS procurement framework at HEAnet from FEE. And then we're going to go into open discussion. So if you have questions as we go through, by all means pop them in chat and we can ask those to each presenter as they finish. And then at the end, we'll just kind of talk about case studies in general or open science practice in general, and maybe where we can go in terms of supporting this. Okay, so Rene, whenever you're ready, by all means take it away.
Hi everybody, I'm Rene Belso from the Danish Infrastructure Corporation. I work currently with data management almost exclusively. DeiC is a national infrastructure provider organization which grew out of the national NREN, like in many European countries. We are now dealing very much with HPC and with data management issues, as well as the networking. But the networking is very much its own kind of organization nowadays, and a supplier to the national infrastructure provider organization. I'm going to speak about specifically data management and the concept of FAIR and how we pursue this nationally. So in terms of the actual data management, it has components all along the research data lifecycle. I mean, all the stages of the research, there are infrastructure requirements and infrastructure problems to be solved. So one of the things we've been doing initially the last year here, when we more and more came into FAIR as opposed to the wider data management, is that we started with a request from the ministry to develop a national FAIR data strategy. And we are now publishing that. I think it will be only a matter of weeks now. It's already handed over to the ministry, and then we're going to move to an implementation phase. Some of the components in that is, of course, building infrastructure, physical infrastructure. It's about competence building, for example, data stewardship, understanding better what is necessary to do good data management and to implement the FAIR principles. What is actually needed there. Somewhat of a cultural change also is part of this. And in doing so, we are very much engaged in trying to get our universities to participate in international collaboration with us as a national level mediator. We are in, let's say, in the business of doing something concrete. And for this reason, it has been very difficult for us to get engaged in many of the otherwise big European projects. We are a very small partner in EUDAT. We are not at all a partner in ETI. We are also a small partner in PRAISE, but that's about it in terms of what of the international things we're involved in. The recent 2 years, we've been quite interested in the Go FAIR project, initiated by the Dutch, the French, and the Germans. This is very interesting for us, especially some of their tools and approaches. This 3-point verification, where you look into metadata and machine accessibility to databases and so on. You make a FAIR implementation plan. You work with FAIR data points and so on. We've also been looking into training, the data stewardship training, and how the universities can strengthen that, how maybe they can collaborate on the more high-end part of it. And now recently we are in the process of organizing a national bidding to build specific infrastructures for data management, but on a national level. It will be owned and built probably locally, but it will be offered on a national scale. That means we have to design business models and so forth. I will now introduce some of the main issues we think are the challenges. So in this process of what we call verification, there are different elements of cultural change, concrete infrastructure and competence which apply to the different stages. And it's very much about developing a better understanding of your data sets, applying metadata, but before doing that, understanding your scientific vocabulary and building metadata templates such that you, in the end, can have a machine accessible data set. Or at least you can have some data that is uploaded to a repository and findable via DIOs. And why do we actually think this is very important? Well, it's very important because as data grows and the complexity of data grows, as a researcher, you simply are challenged with this to keep your data under control, to understand your data and to be able to utilize it from different applications and from different research colleagues, maybe even some that are international. So basically, you're doing it for your own sake. And we hope that we can convince the researchers to strengthen their competences within this data management niche, which is actually about metadata and machine accessibility. And at the end of the day, data being cited will probably also be something that is of value in the future, though this is not very convincing for many people, but at the moment, but we think it has a future. So we've developed a specific workshop, which in the beginning we made rather over quite many days in several modules. Now we've tailored it down to what we call a rapid Info-M concept, where we usually do like 2 half days. But before that, we kind of have an outlining of expectations, so that we make sure that the team that is going for this competence lift, they sign up for the right accounts, they do their homework, and then we have a pre-meeting with them. So everything is set up so we don't waste time on fidgeting with things. And then it's a very much hands-on workshop where we take specific data sets, we work with the metadata, and we make them, in the end, machine accessible. And we've been doing this together with the people from GoFair, which are listed here on the right. You can have a look at it at this link if anybody's interested. So what are the real challenges for the future here? Well, the first thing about the FAIR concept and implementing the FAIR principles is the question of raison d'etre. I mean, why are we actually doing this? The thing is that there is a growing political pressure to open up data because of the value of data exchange and trying to avoid inventing the same wheel twice. This is very much a kind of a request out of the good for the community, for everybody. But the thing with that is that it's very difficult to motivate the researchers behind that agenda. Why should they spend time making data fair so that other researchers can access it? They really don't feel much motivation for doing that. But the other part is, of course, they do it because they can see a self-interest. I'll get back to that. Then there's the thing about the data stewardship. The data stewardship is really very many things to very many people. It's about different scientific areas. I mean, a data steward for humanitarian sciences and the social sciences and the natural sciences is not the same thing. It's not the same depending on which stage of the research process you interact with. And it's also not the same on the lower levels of, let's say, trivial university support functions like library support or IT support, as opposed to integrating computer sciences into your research domain, let's say mathematicians and computer sciences working on climate modeling and computer models and so on. So these things are very much different, and there is some ambiguity about what are we talking about when we talk about data stewardship. And then the last thing is about the funding. There's very much at the moment a disconnect between national funding and European funding. So quickly, one at a time, to wrap up here, the raison d'etre problem is this raison d'etre problem. So why are we doing this? This is about, I mean, the pull, we do it for egoistic reasons. We do it because we need to get our act together, understanding our data better, letting our colleagues access it, letting our supercomputers do modeling and simulation on this data in an automated way. Otherwise, our science will not progress. This is like a self-understood research agenda argument from the researchers themselves. I call that the pull. And that is pretty strong among the researchers which get it, but very weak otherwise. The push is the funding agencies saying that, look, you need to open up this. You need to do this because of the benefit to all of us. This is more difficult to get that going. So there is a dualism here. The thing about the data stewards, these different dimensions here has to be understood, and we have to understand where is the effort to be local, where is it better to do it as a national collaboration, and where should it be done within the international communities. So, of course, being in the business of international collaboration, we should not begin to make efforts and projects about the trivial data management issues. This is better left to standard IT support, like library support and so on. So as we move up the set axis here, this is where it gets more complicated and where we need maybe to do it nationally and internationally. Now, the last thing before I finish is the funding question. The funding question, I mean, all of these stages within the data lifecycle needs infrastructure and needs funding. Many of these areas, they are done within the research teams, which nowadays are very international in their nature. And it's extremely difficult to fund across borders. And the European Open Science Cloud is actually no help here because it does not request national funding crossing borders. It only offers the funding that is in the Horizon Europe program. And that means that consortia are built and they pursue this funding, but it has a disconnect very often to the national funding and the national efforts of building this infrastructure. I think something has to be done about that in the foreseeable future. Otherwise, we kind of lose out on that. And these are the three issues we're working with and trying to do something with. Within data management and FAIR, of course, there are the other areas, networking and computer science, which I don't speak about here. I think that wraps it up for me.
That was excellent. Thank you very much, Rene. Really nice concepts. I like this kind of 3-pillar model from GoFair.
Yeah, well, yeah, this one.
Yeah. And I like how, you've expanded those out, the different kind of levels of, how we're addressing those data management concerns, whether it's locally, whether it's, at that disciplinary level or internationally. That actually brought me on to one of my questions. But if anyone else has questions, please either raise a hand or put them in chat. You mentioned that you were doing kind of national bidding for RDM services, and some of the work you've touched on, like building the vocabularies, getting the metadata templates. I can see you need to do that nationally, but I also wonder about the domain level or how you work collaboratively with other countries, because the metadata is probably standardized across the fields, across the different geographic boundaries. And my question is really about whether you have thoughts about how you'll work with other NRENs or other groups as you kind of develop these areas of work.
Well, first of all, we need to get the universities to see that this is something that they cannot tackle by themselves.
Yeah.
This they have understood when it comes to the physical infrastructure. But when it comes to the data stewardship, for them, this is very much core business in their support functions.
Yeah.
And they want to develop this locally. So we're not at the maturity level with the data stewardship concept that we are actually able to work internationally. We've tried it, as I explained before, with our workshop, and there we have the problem that either we have to do it very generic, and therefore it does not get very high up in complexity, because otherwise we cannot get enough attendance. If we specialize it and want to make it more complex and subject domain specific, then we don't have the power and clout to actually pull it off unless we go international. So I see that as a future challenge. We're not going in that direction. We're going in that direction, but we're not at all made much progress.
Yeah, it's something that possibly, I would like to promise things from EOSC, but it's possibly something that EOSC can help with, because one of the priorities in the strategic research and innovation agenda is around data stewardship, making sure we have formal curricula across Europe. And actually, I think we included a case study from the Danish work and the Dutch work and how the different curricula had been developed, and use that as a kind of impetus for trying to get more standardization across all the different countries. I see there's a question.
Universities are doing it themselves. So like say Copenhagen University, they've been actually, I think, many years now, they've been working with developing a data stewardship education.
Yeah. Yeah, that's who we worked with, I think. So Roberto has put a question in the chat. Can you expand on the infrastructure you're looking to develop?
Yeah, so we see it as a layer on the layer. So at the bottom layer, we have to have some raw storage infrastructure. Normally, I would say across the whole of Europe, this is done at the university level as the standard storage offering that the university gives to its different departments. It could even be cut down to the department level. We see that quite often, actually. But in many universities, it's part of the IT department's offering. And it follows some different open standards or not, and it's close to this university. The problem with that is that this is just not suitable for the way that researchers work. They work beyond their own university very much. And to have data there that cannot be accessed from other universities, whether they be national or international, just is not good enough. So we are trying to develop a raw bottom layer infrastructure, which is like no questions asked. Just put your data there and we will not even look at it, but we will keep it safe. And we will do the one thing is we will add AI. So we will add an infrastructure layer where it can be accessed with your cooperation partners. But nothing more. Then the next layer is more like a vault, where if you make a publication, then because of the code of conduct within science, that it has to be reproducible and so on, and we don't want anybody cheating with their data, then we want a vault where these data can be kept securely. And this is meant for static data and not dynamic data. And here we will begin to ask questions about what kind of data is it, what is the metadata, and so on. But leave it at that. And the next level is actually a repository, where you have like all the bells and whistles of with DOIs and a full layer of metadata, landing pages, and so forth. So this is the hierarchy of the infrastructure being built, and we've divided that into either initially one holistic infrastructure, but actually sliced into 2, maybe 3 layers. And we are now making a national call where the universities will team up and bid for different parts of this. And then we will fund it nationally. But of course, demand that it's open for the whole of all the 8 Danish universities.
Nice. So I like that model of getting the unis collaborating. Right,
and of course, one of the difficulties, as with the European, is to develop the funding model. Because without a funding, without the ability to move funding, I mean serious funding, not just showcase funding, then it does not scale. And if it does not scale, it's not really usable. So we need cost recovery, and we need to be able to charge somehow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the Danish funders allow RDM costs in proposals like other national funders. So hopefully it's something that you can maybe work on models to get things costed in. Because I think one of the major problems we see is that these costs are just invisible. They're part of core university infrastructure, and then people don't really think about when they have either large scales of data or specific requirements for support that need to be built into proposals.
Right, but the invisibility, of course, has to end, because you cannot expect a university A to double its infrastructure capacity for the sake of university B without there being some economic agreement.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, by the way, is the problem in Europe. I mean, why would any national NREN go to a foreign NREN and buy their services when they have their own? I mean, what's the incentive to go shopping, so to say? There isn't any.
Yeah, no, there's not. It's only if you don't have it that maybe you want to use another country's service, but then you have all complications on, cross-border delivery of services. So if you get that nut cracked, that might be helpful for EOS too. So thank you very much, Rene. We'll move on to the next talk, which is from Marie Tinnemans. Do you want to share your slides or check they show okay?
Yes, I will. So. Hi everyone, my name is Marie, I work for SURF, and I'm gonna share my screen now. Right.
It's just coming up, I think. Yeah, here we go. Perfect.
Yeah, you see it? So I'm working for SURF, and I'm mainly working on the access policies in the compute infrastructure for researchers. So the challenge we are facing is to find and guide researchers towards fair practice, towards good data management in the Netherlands. Find and guide them. So what did we do? Okay, first of all, finding them, the first part is quite easy to solve for us because here they are. Here you see them, found them. Because part of SURF is used to be SURFnet, mainly in contact with institutions, so with universities and research institutes. But also another part of SURF used to be SARA, so the HPC compute center of the Netherlands. And SARA was always directly in contact with researchers. So first one solved, one down, one to go, found them. So here you see again, so you see my pointer, yeah. So SARA over here and SURFnet, so don't bear with me the precise location where I put all the logos, but it's to show that now we are a corporation, a SURF corporation, but the SARA, the old compute counterparts from an HPC perspective are the ones in the top, so the HPC centers. And these centers are mainly focusing on granting access to compute infrastructure directly towards scientists, whereas the more on the right are mainly have relationship more with institutions. The focus is different. So the reason I'm showing this this picture is that it's important, I think, to realize where you are in the spectrum. So that if you know where you are, you can also benefit from the good parts from organizations doing other stuff in other parts of their focus area. So, for example, like in the top left, you see Oak Ridge. They're handling the compute infrastructure for the second largest supercomputer in the world. So for Summit, they're only focusing on researchers. They're only. So the name or the location of the university is only important for like the postal address for the scientist. For the rest, not important. For us, SURF, for instance, we're focusing on the like national compute infrastructure and direct relationship with institutions, but we could improve on communicating more about our international compute access for research, because we do that. We make sure that researchers in the Netherlands can do cross-border, so in computing it does exist quite a lot, cross-border delivery of computing power. We could improve on that one. About the compute grants. So at the moment we have about more or less 6,000 researchers directly using our compute and data and expertise infrastructure via about 600 grants, large ones, small ones. So what is this grant to be specific? If you get like this compute grant, it's like a voucher, and it will consist, for example, of like 1 million core hours of computing time and 500 terabyte of storage and all the technical support to get stuff going, applications, logins, research drive use, for instance, to access and share and store internationally. So across, also cross-border. So that's in a grant. Okay. So we did the first part on find and guide. So finding we did, checked one. The other one is guide the researcher. So we did, on the one hand, we did this by information provisioning, and on the other hand, by actively directing the researchers, so the applicants, towards the institutions, towards certain data services. So what does that look like in the application process? So you have this application process where a researcher applies at NWO or SURF for access to compute, data, storage, expertise, and so on. So on the one hand, we did all information provisionings everywhere we could. So everywhere there's a point of contact, we did. So NWO, I have to explain, is the Dutch Research Council. So they're all about funding for scientists. So the NWO and SURF together, we organized the coordination for the allocation of computing time and data. So on the website of NWO, on the website of SURF, on the application page, we put stuff about FAIR, about data management, referring to the data services of different institutes. We did that in the application form where they already have to do a data management plan, a data management paragraph, but most of the time the researchers don't really realize what to fill out. They know they have to fill out something in the field, but not exactly what. So we just try to give them some hints. So maybe you could fill out this one. Maybe you could fill out this one. And also like afterwards at the end of the grant period, when they're done with analyzing and doing their calculations. So we send them email notifications. So, and is coming, what are you going to do with your data? You can store it there. You can do this with it. So really pragmatic information sharing. Okay, on the other hand of what we did is the directing part. So directing the researcher the right way. For this, crucial part is the triangle between SURF, the institution, so the university or research institute, and the researcher. So for this, colleagues like Sylvia, also here present, have put a lot of effort in setting up this triangle. This triangle mainly consists of a network of people, and in the past years, this has been like set up, and it's still improving, of course. But this one is crucial because, as said, SURF has like two parts, like a part focusing on institutions. We had to build up more on research IT contacts, and on the other hand, direct contact with researchers. So we do have, we can make this triangle. So we could make the connection between the researcher and the institute. So what we do in this compute grant application process at the moment, when more data management services show up, we try to direct the researcher simply towards the institution where possible. Yeah. So that's what we did. So what kind of feedback do we get until now? So from research IT departments, from university, they're happy to have more insight and get more insight in what the researchers are doing. So some don't want the extra costs because storing and data management and offering certain services, they cost money, especially when funded option is available. So if they can get it via the national compute infrastructure, why should we pay? Others do want to take the ownership and also the costs that come with it. For SURF, we have a challenge always in the connecting part. So in connecting compute to data in all kinds of parts of the organization. And we will always try to make little steps in improving this one. And for the researcher, the feedback we get is, well, to be honest, I feel a bit sorry for most scientists, for the researchers. Luckily, they don't feel very sorry for themselves because they have a kind of an ooze of acceptance. They know they always have to work themselves through a big pile of forms and proposals and requirements and fields they have to fill out to get the facilities and the resources they need. They just do it because they need to do it to get the facilities. Otherwise, they don't get access. But to fill out the proposals and go through the whole process, it takes a lot of time. So I feel a bit sorry for them, but they do it because, yeah, they have to. Okay, for next steps. So we would like to track the whole process and not only the end result. So we could use like identifiers to also during the whole research project to generate data points. And also we have like SURF research access management. So services for authentication via the institute that would automate give the possibility to automate certain processes as well, and have like already checkboxed and filled out fields. In all this, the integration, so being able to move data and data between systems and funding is essential. Yeah, and the last thing is we always have to be aware that we have the responsibility to correctly and clearly inform the researchers about possibilities they are this, so they can't make them up for themselves. So it's our task, I think. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, yeah, to summarize, our train of thought was, as said, like where the resources are, so where the facilities and the funding, where the resources are, you will find the researchers. So we thought, let's inform and guide them from there to fair. That would be the most important thing to say. For my last words is on the image I put on the I put on this last one, because I put this one because so you won't forget about supercomputing centers and what they could do for open science, because there is actually the connection with researchers everywhere the whole time on this in the compute centers. This is the beautiful Mare Nostrum supercomputer in Barcelona. It's actually built inside of a chapel. I just love that they did that. So
yeah, very nice. It's better than what happens in the UK, where they're turned into carpet shops. It's a nicer thing having it as a supercomputing center.
Yeah,
that was excellent. Thank you very much, Mary. So again, I have questions. I completely understand this need for signposting. That's something that came out of a lot of the work in the UK. When we were helping different universities, lots of researchers just didn't know what services were available in their uni, and we used the data management process to kind of flag and signpost things at various points. So whether it was ethics review or their DMP or different steps, trying to make sure we're always giving them the pointers. But I was interested at how you do that with the unis, because obviously this kind of triangle model, you know what's happening in SURF, you've got the contact with the researchers through the compute requests, but did you have a way of kind of gathering information from the uni so that you could make those relevant signposts, or how was that liaison done? And I don't know, maybe Sylvia's better to speak to that than you, if you were doing most of that role, Sylvia, but I think that would be an interesting model to try and bring together.
Mari can excellently answer that as well.
Okay, I can say something about it. So for instance, for like a service like Research Drive, we know which institutes have this service and what the contact points are, because we actually made the contracts with them, with institutions. So for like a service on sharing and storing your data like that, we just put the links there so they know where to go. And also the contact person. So we have one contact person, one of the advisor at SURF, handling if there are certain researchers who should be directed, the ones who should be directed. She looks for the right person at the institute and then connects them. So some is still going manually. It's not all like completely automated. And then for certain data service, they just have the institutions who have a contract on certain data services. They have a dashboard, and that made it. Yeah.
So what we do try to accomplish is to have a link from the application form for the compute. Have links for every institution where they can find the contact person within their own institution, but also a list with the tools and services available at the institution. So that's a website at the local institution. It's not ours.
Yeah.
We just link to the website. And we make agreements with the institutions that they have such a landing page for this information. Not all of them have it yet, but most of them do. Yeah. And that's really helpful. Yeah. So it's a collaboration really with the institutions.
Yeah. I think that's incredibly useful, because I mean, often researchers don't know where on their own university website to find things, and it's not always simple to do that. I know myself, when I've been working with different unis, I've often Googled to try and find those pages for them, because it just doesn't come up when you're looking through the main university search function.
That's right.
So yeah, even just having that named contact, and that will be hugely valuable to researchers.
Yeah, it's really pragmatic, actually. Yeah.
Any other questions? I don't see anything in chat, but would anyone like to raise a hand or ask anything to Mari before we move on?
I just wanted to emphasize one more thing, and that's really we see it as if we have failed if researchers have used our compute facilities and didn't make one PhD or generate one PhD or whatever, then we have failed, because then we have given them a possibility of not doing their work in a fair way. And that's really what we want to work towards, making sure that we guide these researchers in a way that it's going to be very easy for them to use the fair research practice. And I think that's something really important to realize also for NRENs, that we can also look at other services and tools that we offer that we can also improve and make easier for researchers to use and use it in a fair way.
Yeah. Do you track that at all? Do you look at like the compute calls and the outcomes from it and kind of see, you know, how many are adopting fair practice, or is that something you plan to do in future? Or
it's a plan, definitely.
Yeah. No, exactly. Now you've got the support in place, you can start to monitor, you know, how that's being picked up.
And we did, since last year, we added in they have to fill out their org ID, so the ORCID number, so we can track them a bit more. We not actually really doing that well, but we started asking them for it in the application. So that's first step. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think as soon as you start using these IDs, it helps to generate that whole kind of research graph and track everything and link it all up together. There's a question from Rene in the chat about the national storage, how it's funded, how big is the development effort?
Yeah, I can relate to that. So the national storage, so the storage part of the compute, it's actually like seen as part of the compute. So they get like the project space on the Cartesius computer, that's actually seen as part of the supercomputer. So it's all in the same, it's all nationally funded. So we don't, at SURF, we don't have a separate storage grant, but I know some of the other HPC centers, they do have it. So some are starting with it. So you see, like for instance, in Germany or I know in Italy, they have like A, B, C class projects. So there's from small, largest compute. And then they started D projects. So you can apply for only storage. From now in the Netherlands, you add the storage to the compute, so they don't have special storage calls. But it does start to come in the different compute centers. So I speak to them. I've spoken to a lot of them, thinking about some have like storage like separately. Then you can have like multiple compute grants running, and then one data storage grant where you can. That's connected to all the compute grants, that you can store everything. So.
But Mari, that storage connected to compute is only temporarily during the project funding, right?
Yeah, it's meant. Yeah, exactly. That's the challenge a lot of HPC centers are facing, because they see the storage only the storage part during the grant as part of the grant, and then they also say like after the end of the grant, after they're finished with their project, then it should be the responsibility of the university or the institute. But then depending on where they are in this spectrum, so the ones with very little contact with institutions, with universities, they don't know where to go with all the storage. So they just leave it there, or like they're looking for solutions. And other ones are like beginning to try to set up like, we have to inform universities more that they should archive the data after the end of this grant period.
Yeah, and there's one quick follow-on question I'll just take from Rene about whether the SURF drive is joined up to the HPC. Is this the storage that people are allocated, or is SURF drive separate to this storage?
SURF research drive. So because the
Okay.
drive can only, well, now it's changed. First, it changed now, but it was only used for SURF members, so only in the Netherlands. And then, as said, like researchers are always working cross-border, cross everything. So then we started Research Drive that could work across all borders, and also with really large amount of storage. On SURF Drive is more limited, limit on storage use. That wasn't sufficient for most users. It's just not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mary. That was great. So we'll move on to our final case study now, which comes from Coyle, who's got a lovely Eduroam background. It's a shame class isn't here to see it. Do you want to share your slides and we'll check that's all working okay?
1 second now. Can you see that?
Not yet. It hasn't come up with the black box. Oh, it is now saying that it's loading. Yeah, perfect. We see it.
Okay. Okay. So thanks for the introduction, Sarah. So my name is Coyle. I work in HEAnet's brokerage team, and I'll be talking to you today about our CRIS, or Current Research Information Systems Framework, the process we went through. So just firstly, a quick word about HEAnet. And it's not moving forward, of course. There we go. That's better. Are the slides moving forward?
It hasn't moved. Oh, it has now.
There
Yeah, there's just a slight delay on it. My
Yeah.
computer was slow like this the other day.
Okay, so HEAnet's raison d'etre is to enable Ireland's digital ambition. So what we say about ourselves, we are Ireland's National Education and Research Network, and we deliver high-speed internet connectivity and IT shared services to all levels of the Irish education system. That's primary and post-primary schools, that's third level or university sector, and what we refer to as the fourth level, which is research. And that amounts to over 1 million students, researchers and staff relying on our national network every day. So in terms of the brokerage team, we save clients time, effort, and money by doing a number of things. We streamline procurement processes, run tenders on behalf of the clients, work with the OGP, in Ireland, it's the Office of Public Procurement, and also GÉANT to create, and we assist in creation and also allowing our clients to use these frameworks. We work with suppliers to aggregate client demand. We support clients in running their own tenders, and we give clients access to preferential pricing agreements. Our portfolio is kind of divided into 4 main areas. You've got hardware and equipment, services and consultancy, software and licensing, and student and staff offers, which are available from the HEAnet store. So in terms of the, doing it again. Sorry about this. What is happening?
You haven't deployed Komodo too, have you? That's kind of messed up all those GÉANT laptops. They're all going super slow with the antivirus.
Bear with me 1 second. So
it's okay, don't worry.
I use a click. Oh, here we go.
It's coming now.
So, to talk to you about the CRIS case study outline today, it's kind of divided into the problem, or identifying what the need is in Ireland, the approach that we took, some of the outcomes, what came out of that, and also some advice at the end. So let's kick off with identifying the need. So research organizations in Ireland, and obviously across the world, they need to manage information on research in order to monitor grants, to track the outputs, and also identify what's working and what's not working in terms of the research strengths that they're providing. There are a number of CRIS systems available to do this at the moment. Some of you might recognize the names. There's Elsevier's Pure, Converis, Dimensions, WorkTribe, and, not easy to say, Sympletic Elements. Institutions typically procure these systems individually. However, as part of the HEAnet remit, what we look at is aggregating demand within the clients and then running a procurement on their behalf. So because of that aggregation, our resulting agreements give much better terms and conditions and discounts, and these wouldn't be available or possible for individual institutions who go to tender on their own. So what we did in terms of this procurement, as we established a national CRIS procurement framework. And what this allows our clients to do is to draw down via a call for what we call a call-off contract to purchase cloud or managed hosted CRIS services. And that would include support and any value-added services that go along with that. So moving on to the approach that we took. Okay, the first thing that we do is that we consult with our clients. We talk to the clients, understand, have a look at what's out there in the market and what their needs, what their needs are, so we can identify common requirements across the sector. What we discovered was that around half of Irish institutions, they're still using homegrown solutions. However, similar to what's going on in other countries, larger institutions invest in a formal CRIS system. So these were the clients that we concentrated on. We collaborated with them to identify the key service providers that we could liaise with in terms of preparing for the tender. So we ran a series of market engagement sessions with the providers that were identified through the clients. The investment of time in this market research is key, as it allows the providers to engage with the project team on the current state of the market, what's coming down the line, anything we need to be aware of in terms of any red flags that would slow down the procurement process once we publish. So once we've completed the market engagement, we develop and publish our request for tender. Now, our call for tenders, they tend to focus on what we call qualitative elements, and these allow clients to look at options around service quality. And this approach, we use this approach because although cost is important, we're trying to move away from it being a dominant factor in the evaluation process. So click on that again. So the qualitative elements that our call for tender focuses on would be infrastructure, integration, professional and training services, onboarding services and an exit strategy, support, of course, upgrade and release management, functionality or technical fit, it's sometimes referred to, and then the cost. Our award criteria in terms of the evaluation, they're based on these 7 requirements and the responses to those qualitative elements. So the criteria, each of these criteria for A to F, that's everything outside of cost, they're awarded between 10 and 16% of the overall mark, and while G, which is the cost element, gets 30% of the mark. An important thing in relation to the evaluation is that tenders need to achieve a minimum rating of 41% of the marks available in each and all of the elements that we're evaluating. Otherwise, they can be eliminated from the competition. Okay, so some of the outcomes that come out there, like what does it result in? Okay, so the CRIS framework resulted in 6 providers or suppliers being admitted into the framework. They're Clarivate, Digital Science, Elsevier, Smart Simple, Viadum, and Work Tribe. The framework that we put in place, it supports a direct award mechanism across each lot. There's also lightweight mini tender and full mini tender processes available. So we have 5 lots and we limit it to 2 resellers in each lot. And this strategy works really well for us because it reduces the time, the effort, and the barriers for clients. It makes it easy for them to draw down services, to identify what they want and draw down, and also for suppliers who wish to admit or to be admitted into the framework. So we use what we call a sample institution, and it's included as part of the technical specification. And what this does is it allows institutions to assess relative pricing for a specific set of services and features. Things that the sample institution would cover would be, for example, the number of users, the type of research grants, storage capacity, system integration requirements. But we would also ask for pricing for initial setup costs, consultancy, licensing, And also we look for day rates for professional services such as training and project management in some instances. All prices quoted by the service providers who are admitted into the framework, they're for the life of the framework. So that means that if you request an information bundle from us in the first year of the framework, the pricing is the same in the last year of the framework. So, and this includes to anything that's covered in the sample institution, but also for any additional services that are purchased. Okay, so the framework, the initial term of the framework was 31st of March 2020 to 31st of March 2024, which is the standard 4 years. However, we also included the right to extend by an additional 4 12-month periods. And this is an important factor because it provides continuity for the institutions. The reason being that, of course, a CRIS is a very complex system. It requires integrations to a huge number of systems across the campus. And there needs to be a reasonable lead-in, lead-out time. Our experience, a typical CRIS setup cycle can be anything from 18 to 24 months. And after all that effort, you don't want to be then having 3 years and then having to go back to the market. And that's why we look at giving the right to extend for an additional 4 months, which can give you 8 to 10 years totally on the framework. Okay, so some lessons that we learned in this and just some advice for other people going out on this. Liaising with service providers early in the market process. This is key. This is absolutely key. It allows you to discuss within the project team and with the suppliers any possible red flags, so that once you get to publishing the framework, it doesn't then slow down because something is, oh, hang on, that's an issue for us, or that's an issue for us. You get all of that sorted out within procurement compliance and what you can, but it's a really good use of time in identifying the issues and resolving them, and it smoothens out the path to the framework itself going live. Multiple supplier or multi-supplier, multi-lot strategy is very successful within the education sector. I've mentioned this before, it reduces the barriers for clients who want to draw down services, as well as suppliers wishing to be admitted. Because if you have if you think about it, there's one solution per lot, where there's more than one version of that solution, they are put together. And in situations like that, you could run a lightweight or a full mini tender. Having multiple providers offering a similar platform in one lot, again, as I said, it makes it easier for institutions to compare and contrast the service offerings before they award a contract. And just one more thing to say on this is that, like, if there is sufficient demand across other countries, other NRENs, in relation to the CRIS, the paperwork that we have developed and are using for this framework, it can be generalized and shared via GÉANT, and it will allow it to be used in other countries. Some of the providers, of course, that are in our framework, they operate in multiple territories, and therefore NRENs can use a similar tender documentation bundle, but they can streamline it for themselves related to the procurement requirements and rules that they would have in their own territories. So that is it for now. Just to say that if you're any questions that you think of that we don't do today, you can contact the HEAnet team. We have our own web page on the company website, and you can contact us by email at brokerage@heanet.ie. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fee, as well. So another very interesting talk. Again, I have a question ready, but Garvin, do you have a hand raised? Actually, I'm trying to see. That's a new icon to me. No, it's my cursor. So if anyone has questions, by all means, add them into chat as we go along. One thing I was interested in, I personally find these procurement frameworks a really nice model. It's something I'd like to try and pursue at GÉANT more widely, because I've sensed that universities are going out to tender for many RDM services. And like you said, individually, they don't get the same terms and conditions, the same deals. And I think that whole procurement process is something that's quite new to a lot of unis. So there's many kind of pitfalls they can fall into when they're doing it for a first time, or, when like obviously people in the uni are familiar with it, but maybe not the librarian or the IT staff who are doing specific ones. I wondered whether you've sensed any demand for more than just the CRIS tools. So have you seen other tools that unis are picking up on, like lab notebooks or repository services, that you think there's a similar demand for in Ireland, or has it really just come out around the CRIS so far?
Well, this is where we are at the moment, is with CRIS, and Garvin might jump in here. But what I would say about CRIS is, because of the fact that if a client is interested in this, or an institution, you are talking about 18 to 24 months of a project. You've got to look at what you want across the whole of the campus, and then there's the integration with so many services. I'm sure those of you involved in research would know this. So the procurement piece can be, if we're running it for you, it can be 6 to 9 months, depending on that, which is, but you've got the other, you've got the rest of the time that you've got to look at it. So we have, since the launch of it, we've got 2 clients who are up and running, and we've got another couple of clients who are at different stages of their project in order to put a CRIS in place. In relation to other asks for researchers, Garvin, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, so this CRIS framework was the first time that we'd put something together specifically towards the research side of the house. So historically, we would have done things like an LMS tender, and if you look at the documentation we issued for the CRIS, it started life as the LMS tender and has been through a few evolutions on different procurements we've worked locally. There's potential complexities on trying to do it as a full GÉANT monster framework like the IAAS Plus one through OCRA. These things are they're big complex beasts, and there's quite a lot of integration possible, customization, say layout wise or workflow wise or process flow wise, that needs to be done. My intuition is that if this bundle of documentation was turned into a GÉANT template like we did with the LMS tender, it might be possible for certainly at a country level or a couple of countries to run aggregate procurements of this nature. At least then you can put the local flavor that you want. We had quite a broad spectrum of institutions who were keen to use it, from large to small. We had some of the larger ones who had already got a CRIS in place, but this would enable them to streamline their procurement when they come up to the end of their contracts in the next couple of years. The reception from clients has been really, really, really positive. They love that we've just made this problem go away. They have an easy way to consume. And as Fee said, we've already started to see some traction on it. There's more that are, going through the procurement motions to get it across the line. So all good.
Yeah, there's a question that just came up in chat as you were speaking there from Janos, just asking how many institutions use this framework, and how much effort have you devoted to the integration from the HEAnet side?
Sure. So as Fee says, we have about, I think, 20 clients to whom this would be of interest, right? At the time we went to press, we had 7 universities. 4 of them already had some sort of pre-existing CRIS contract, but obviously that meant 3 hadn't. And we had, of the remaining 14, some of them had a few bits of tape, some spreadsheets, and lots of winging and praying to keep it going. So far, that's 4 who have either done it or who are in active process of doing it. So what's that, 25% uptake so far? It's not up that long. It's operational about 12 months, 14 months. Over the lifetime of the framework, we would expect to see at least as much again, so maybe another 4 to 6 it depends on the length of pre-existing contracts for some of them, but those who are on pre-existing contracts are itching to use it when they get it done. So we have a 12-month-old guide dog puppy who's staying with us, who's a bit boisterous beside me. The effort, it took us over the course of part-time, right? Maybe a day, a week, some days, so to say the week with meeting with the providers, we did 2 or 3 days where we met all of the providers. You know, that was obviously full day. Quiet puppy. It would have been, say, the equivalent of 2 people a day and a half a week for, say, 3 months equivalent, because we had the LMS tender documentation as our start point. That knocked large tracts of time out of it, and because we'd been through the learning experience of the LMS tender, we knew how to get through the process quicker, right? So this wasn't our first rodeo with this type of tender approach. We used an aggressive lotting strategy. The market feedback was very positive, and that meant that when, you know, just on the one of the fringe benefits that we saw out of it, when that tender closed, we had framework contracts with all the providers signed maybe 9 weeks after the tender closed. So that included tender evaluation, the clarification period of questions, we had Christmas in the middle, and by the end of January, we had all the framework contracts signed. Right, that's moving at speed. And what Fee was saying about, by front loading the work, by doing the market engagement, sending the draft framework call off and tender documentation out to all of the people we'd met, meant we got some excellent feedback from them. Where we could make improvements, we did. Where we couldn't make improvements, we told them we couldn't and why we couldn't. And then when we came to, once we were out of standstill, within 2 weeks, we had all those frameworks signed, right? So the process worked really well for us. The institutions are thrilled, everybody's winning. And it was, but because we were building on our experience with LMS and some other tenders that we'd run in a similar fashion, that meant we were able to move without it being, you know, a huge taker of time for the team. You know, we didn't have to put everybody on it for a month or something.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you built off your LMS framework and the potential for others to build off what you've done here, you know, if we make that available as like a template package, I think it should be easier for others to pick up on it. So that's something we'd be interested in from GÉANT. If other people see a need for procurements around CRIS services and you're interested in using the HEA network, let us know, because we can collaborate to try and make these things available more widely. Any other questions anyone has for Fee and Garvin? Either raise a hand or by all means put stuff in chat.
We'll also take the medium of interpretive dance. But,
you do our jazz hands. Let's kind of like act out CRIS procurement frameworks. Okay, well, I have put a question in chat for all of you because we've got kind of 20 minutes left. We can obviously wrap up earlier if there's not too much discussion. But one thing we wanted to do in light of these 3 case studies, so thanks to all the speakers, I think it's been excellent to hear about the work that you've been doing. We wanted to think about this kind of series of case studies that we're writing up. So we've been working with Rene and his colleague Anders, and with Mary and with Fee and Garvin to write up these case studies. And we're going to work with the Marcoms team in GÉANT to kind of, you know, properly typeset those, add some nice images, and there's already nice diagrams in all your presentations, which we can reuse as well. But we're interested to know if there's work that you've been doing that you think would be good for a case study, because obviously we're very happy to collaborate with you on that. So if you've done anything in this field of open science or FAIR, but also if there are topics that you think you'd like to see covered. So there's particular problems that you're running into with your universities or with the service kind of portfolio that you have that you'd like to see good examples on. So I know, for example, the Japanese have been doing work on hosting repository solutions for their community. So we could work with either the NREN community within Europe, the GÉANT community, or with the international REN community, and find good case studies to kind of support the issues that you're facing. So if anyone has reflections on either of these two questions, we'd be very happy to hear them. So don't all be shy. We'll give it a couple of minutes in case anyone has thoughts on that.
I have,
yeah, Sylvia?
Idea.
Yeah, sure.
I just have to look up the initiative that I don't remember how they're named by heart. Let me find it really quick. I have my notes here. It was there was a presentation at EOSC symposium.
Okay.
From a researcher
Mm-hmm.
that has set up an open science community for researchers by researchers.
Okay.
And they've set up local communities, but they have also made a blueprint for other research communities throughout the world, basically, to set up this community themselves with a toolbox.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very nice bottom-up approach of researchers themselves to take the lead in how they should adopt open science.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we can as a NREN community and a research supporting community, we can also encourage other communities to research communities to have a look at this and maybe consider adopting such a open science community themselves, because I think it can help if researchers themselves are going to organize themselves in these kind of communities. It will become easier for us as well to help them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I know that kind of research engagement is quite a theme across many NRENs. And also within EOSC, we've set up a new task force around that. So that sounds a really good example for us to pick up on. If you're able to find the links, and we can, in one of our meetings, we can follow up on that, and I'll reach out to them to document it. There was, okay, thank you very much for that. There was also like an ambassadors program that was run through the Research Data Alliance in their last funded European project. And I think one of the ambassadors, Nikolai, he was involved in some of that fair work in DeiC. So he's one of the people who'd been working in his community to raise awareness of the need for metadata and to develop, I can't remember if it was like some kind of water research he was doing, or I can't recall the field. Sorry?
Wind energy.
Wind energy. Thank you very much. Yeah, so to develop the metadata standards they needed in that field. So again, I think these things where they're researcher led, you know, it kind of gains more traction because it's coming from the community, like you said with this one. So I'll follow up on that, and that blueprint's maybe something we could roll out through the NRENs too. Does anyone else have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I think that coming from GÉANT as you do, I think you really have to be conscious about your funding model, because this is the big problem in all kinds of data management and fair implementation. There is really no funding for it, because there is only the funding that the researchers get. And for researchers with their research grants to build infrastructure is very much it's overwhelming, because the costs for this are unproportional to the benefit it makes their own little group. So it's an obvious thing for international collaboration and for the national infrastructure providers to engage in, but there really is no international collaboration because there is no willingness to pool resources together. So when have you ever seen country A and country B co-fund data management infrastructure? It just doesn't happen. There is only the money that is in Horizon Europe.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at a disciplinary level to some extent, you know, where there's been things like CERN and the LHC, then you get the different member states together, but it's kind of rare. So maybe with like the big S3 landmark projects, we get the co-investment across countries. But like you say, it's certainly not something researchers can do within their project funding, because it's too big a scope. So yeah, institutions or building up nationally like you're doing in Denmark, I think is really important, because there needs to be that core infrastructure for researchers to draw on. And then we have the question of how you sustain it. So finding ways either to have that core funded, or to, have that as an element of the grant proposal, that certain costs are reimbursed. I know some of the universities in the UK, for example, I think it was Cambridge, who they have their repository and they have a certain allowance, so many megabytes or gigabytes that researchers can deposit for free, and then over that there's a per gigabyte charge, and then that's something that can be transparently put onto grants to try and help sustain the repository. But yeah, we need to find workable models, because I know researchers are always very reticent to write these costs into proposals, because they think they'll seem uncompetitive, and they want their funding to be for the research, not for the infrastructure and for the data management. Any other comments before we close? I don't see any hands raised. So I will just once again thank all the speakers. Thanks, Rene and Mary and Fee. It was excellent to hear your case studies. And I'll be back in touch on the text that we've been writing up.
Actually, sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, go ahead, Roberto.
I was stuck on the mute. So I was really interested in what Rene was saying. And also looking at the scale of the Danish, your organization and HEAnet, we're very similar in size in terms of community that we serve. You mentioned 8 universities. We have roughly the same number in Ireland, but we also connect technical institutes which are becoming universities. We may have more than 8 soon. But from your point of view, how much staff do you have allocated to these activities?
1, 2. Not even, because those people are busy with many things.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like almost nothing.
All right, but you're working a lot with universities to build up your system, right?
Most of our effort is to get them to cooperate. So we have a national approach to infrastructure, that it is to be owned and carried by the universities. But we exist on the national level only to coordinate and get them to cooperate. We don't ourselves basically do any infrastructure operations or development. And in terms of development, I don't really see anywhere there is any development on data management infrastructure. Usually, I mean, look at a good, strong case like EUDAT in Europe, a project which is now also an organization. The amount of effort it puts into the various infrastructures is minimal. I mean, it's only marketing and coordination. There is no effort into the actual development. What they do is they go to open source communities and basically download and rebrand and market those products. So as long as there is no development effort within data management infrastructure, I think the research will always then go to the commercial providers.
Yeah. And I think this is a problem for our sector as a whole, because we're seeing more and more researchers using commercial services because, they function well. And then there's a question about, the sustainability cost of that, or also, whether we keep control of our data. We don't want to find that we kind of sell it off the way we have with open access, with publications. And, we're kind of having to pay licensing fees to see those publications that have come from public funds. So yeah, I think there's a kind of question for the community at whole, and I think the NRENs and GÉANT are kind of quite well placed to try and address that collectively.
Well, certainly your experience. I mean, you've been dealing with the commercial. I mean, all your network is probably also produced from commercial providers, and you are a shopping organization to a large extent.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the data infrastructure, you can see the big publishing companies like Elsevier and so on. They are moving the data management infrastructure provisioning. So they're slowly, like a Pure, for example, is a good example. They're slowly spreading to the whole kind of the flow of the data and the services, the whole working process they're moving into. And the universities are actually not really doing anything about it.
Yeah, I think there's a issue for unis as well. I know certainly from the UK, there's a strong push to buy in services rather than running things in-house, which has meant people have just gone out and purchased. But then when you look at like the publisher's kind of business model, you know, Elsevier has been very proactive in buying up lots of open source tools, not always rebranding them. So it's not clear that you're buying a whole suite of Elsevier services. And I think that does beg questions around, you know, our control of the scholarly commons, you know, when a publisher's effectively got an end-to-end service and they're going to make it easy for you to transfer your data from one service to another, and, you know, then it becomes even more kind of sellable to institutions when you've got things working neatly together. But yeah, what the consequence of that is a big open question.
Yeah, I just want to go back to your point there, Rene, about getting the universities to collaborate with one another and yourselves, I guess you meant, right? Both ways, with one another and with yourselves?
Well, I think the universities have to give up this idea to do their homebrew Dropbox. Luckily, there are not so many still doing this, but there are still many who think they can make quality infrastructure by doing it themselves, and they just can't because they're too small and they don't fund it properly and they don't have enough of the developer competence. I mean, top-notch programmers and so on. So the researchers will always think it's inferior quality and go for the commercial products, unless the universities team up and put real effort behind it. But even in a small country like Denmark, that wouldn't be sufficient. You would have to go international. So why is it that these different products that the European projects are offering as their own, like EU that offering B2 Drop, which is the same as Surfbox, or what was it called, Surfdrive.
Surfdrive or SwitchDrive, and
yeah, it's all built on Nextcloud, right? Open source community. Why is it that they just go to this community, take their thing, and then rebrand it? Why is it that they don't put real developer effort into teaming up with that community and making something of it? They just don't. And as long as they don't do that, they will always have inferior products, and the researchers will prefer the commercial products, with all the drawbacks that there is with the commercial. There is the vendor login and all the lack of transparency, the selling of your data and so forth. And this complex discussion that you cannot accept the commercial market on its commercial terms because it's just not okay what they're doing on the one hand. On the other hand, you cannot do it yourself and make your own software because it just isn't good enough. And this discussion is not being recognized.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I hope we can get, you know, groups, either institutions or national initiatives and projects. You know, I think the EUDAT project, they did some great work around the service suite they developed, but that was project funded. So a lot of the development stopped, and now, like you say, it's just marketing and maintaining services and maybe some work through the
No, but even with
partners.
The funding, it wasn't development. I mean, even when they got money from the commission, they did not put this money into, I mean, development of infrastructure. They were marketing infrastructure.
Yeah. Any final points before we close? We're now nearly at past. No? Excellent. Well, thank you to all the speakers. Thanks to Magda for sorting out and administering the recording. She's also put the slides online because I couldn't get into the wiki. So you'll have the content there. We'll put the recording online as well. And if there's any further follow-up, obviously you could welcome to reach out to me or to the speakers individually. And we look forward to seeing you in another InfoShare. Thank you all very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Sylvia's little boy too.